Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I am your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Dr. Monica Curry. Dr. Monica Curry is the founder and CEO of Impacting Squared, where she helps leaders move beyond overwhelm to create lasting impact within their organizations. She's known as the gentle disruptor, someone who challenges the status quo through honest conversations that drive real behavioral change. With a background in organizational effectiveness, she has dedicated her career to guiding professionals through uncertainty, helping them strengthen their leadership presence while fostering inclusive and resilient workplace cultures. Whether she's coaching executives, teaching leadership and innovation as a professor, or serving on advisory boards, Dr. Monica is committed to shaping the future of leadership with intention and empathy. You can find Monica on LinkedIn by searching Monica Curry or by going to her website, impactingsquare.com, or by email at mcurry@impactingsquare.com. Hello, Monica. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Who was that person you were talking about? Because it doesn't sound like me.
It's all true things. It's all true.
It is, but being on the other side and hearing someone talk about you it's just a little unnerving, but it is absolutely all true. And so, again, I am honored. I'm excited about being here for such a great conversation. So let's go.
Let's go. And, one thing I will also say to that before we start is so many times when we're going through life, making that impact, hitting our goals, whatever it might be, we forget some of our own impact and accomplishments that come out. And it's not until sometimes we hear someone say something about us or, accomplish different things where we're like, wait, really? I did that? I'm here too.
I do. I think about it, and it's interesting because you and I have had this conversation and others. The doctor piece still is unnerving to me to hear that associated with my name. And so a lot of times I'm just like, no, just call me just call me Monica. We're friends. And, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, no, I won't. But I'm like, I want to make sure that I'm always at a level that there's a level of connectivity. Not everybody connects to the DR in front of my name. There are some individuals that it causes a little angst. That there's that imposter, like I need to be more than, and I'm like, then I start with my jargon. I'm like, no, I'm regular people. I'll reference my daughter, some of the slang that she uses, because at the end of the day, no matter what you have before or after your name, we're all people at the end of the day, and we're just looking for different ways to connect.
And it's also meeting people where they are and where their space is. That being said, to start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Dr. Monica Curry?
Absolutely. So I want to do twofold, but just know that they connect. So first, from a professional standpoint, at the end of the day, my goal is to create lasting impact by empowering leaders, building inclusive cultures, creating high-performing workplaces, all of that to ensure that people can just be people, as we just talked about, but that there isn't an overlap. And so from a personal standpoint, I am a Mimi. So I'm too young and too cool to be a grandma or a nana. So I am a Mimi. I am an auntie of two. I am a mother. I am a sister. I am all of these things. And to me, being a good sister is one of or good mother, good Mimi, all of those are higher accomplishments for me than a DR in front of my name or, any of the accolades that I may get in the corporate setting. For me, it's more important than those. Mm-hmm. But in the same token, the work that I am doing in the corporate setting, I always say, because people ask, like, there's always a why behind everything we do, right? Mm-hmm. And so my why for the work that I do around creating those inclusive cultures is because I am a Mimi. I want to make sure that my grandson can walk into any corporation in any industry and authentically be himself. And so, success for me will translate into, and not that I want to wait until he's in a age bracket where, because he's only 7 now, but just knowing that each day, each impact, each connection I make is leading towards creating that inclusive culture across industries for him. That's what success looks like, sounds like, feels like. But I also equate it to an analogy of there are some families that still sit around the dinner table, right? There's somewhere. And so I always think about if someone that I had an impact with or had a connection with today or sometime this week was sitting around the dinner table with their family members, what would they say about me? And as long as it's not like she was this, that, and the other, my hope is like, wow, she made me feel. For me, I'm a feeler. I'm an empath. She made me feel. She made me think. That to me is also success, a huge success for me.
I love that you brought up the dinner table analogy because I grew up where as often with my parents being in the medical field,
Okay.
my dad's a doctor, and worked in ERs and, had a trauma and is an anesthesiologist, and my mom is a therapist and
Okay.
worked in hospital environments and this and that. So we grew up with a level of, obviously, myself and my 2 younger sisters, very active. We had different things going on. My parents could get called away for different reasons, but they had two underlying things the whole time we were growing up. Anytime we could have dinner, even if it was later in the night, we were sitting down at the table and everyone was going to tell us about your day. And to this day, my parents still make fun of sometimes when we start telling each other about our days at the dinner table, of when we used to go notch by notch on everything that was covered, of I went to school, I played in the ball pit, I had lunch, and they will do that of oh, when we start going through our list and saying everything we did, they'll be like, so you played in the ball pit today.
I love it.
And the second big thing they did, and I still talk about this and has moved into my adulthood, one of which is the breakfast and dinner table aspect. And the second is my parents, they've been married over 30 years now.
Okay, mom and dad. I love it.
They've been married a long time. It's easy because they had me a year after they got married. So I just could remember my own age and be like, okay, it's about this. But they, one thing they did that had a ripple effect, even in my family and legacy, some of my cousins have played into building their families as well as myself, is they didn't take a trip without us. A work trip, anything. It was, the family's coming. So I remember there was a time, and I have pictures and memories, for example, when my mom had to go speak at a conference when I was younger. They would speak. And once we got to a point where we couldn't leave school, we just did family trips, teacher convention, this and that. But when I was younger, my mom had a conference in New Orleans, and then she spoke and she was invited to actually go and be an audience member at the Oprah Winfrey show and meet Oprah.
Wow.
And I got to I have this picture, not that I can remember it, for anything, but of me and my parents with Oprah Winfrey. And I'm like, oh wow. And it was okay, if the kids can't come, again, when we were younger than for family trips, they made it important to expose us to different environments and make sure we were present. So when you talk about the dinner table and all the feels and all that, I was like, yes, you're talking my language. Because I think so many times there's that gap, as well as you kind of said, of people, how many people are really doing it and being present and having those conversations in today's society. Because something as simple as making the time to sit at the dinner table and talk through things are being skipped.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that if things are parlaying into your adulthood. So my grandson is 7. And so I talk to him every morning on his way. My daughter calls me, so I can talk to him every morning while he's waiting for the bus, unless he's in trouble. And when he gets out of school. And so the first question I'll always ask him since he's been in school is, what was the best thing that happened to you today? And so he now has adopted that. And so when he calls me, Mimi, how was your day? What was the best part of your day? What might you do differently? And I'm like, okay, 7-year-old, you can't use my stuff against me. But I also coach that way too, because what we have to, and it kind of leads back to our previous conversation, is we have to realize that there's more good, there's more connections, there's more to celebrate than there is to be, oh, woe is me, or this didn't happen. And so we need to spend more time deliberately and intentionally being grateful for what we have, what we've done, and who we have in our lives. We have to do more of that and being intentional. So, but yeah, I think it's funny. My 7-year-old grandson will call me, Mimi, how was your day? What was the best part of your day? I'm like, oh my goodness, am I really rubbing? I mean, talking about making an impact on those generations. I'm like, oh my goodness. But I coach the same way too. So I had a coaching session this morning, and it was a young lady that, she shared with me the trials and tribulations that she had in 2024 and was like, Monica, I can't think of anything positive, anything that I want to share. And I said, so for some people, it's okay to say that I made it to 2025. It is okay to say, you know what? That is the best thing that happened to me last year, that I made it to see another year. So she was just like, oh, I didn't even think of it that way.
And it's sometimes reframing, but it's also,
Yep.
I think a lot of times, as you kind of touched upon, we're continuously moving and we forget to sit in it for a second,
Mhm.
but also like understanding there is a win in a loss. And when I say that, I'll use an example of myself, and then I'd love to hear your perspective on this, is, I started offering a new product a little while ago. And when I got it, I got my first, I'll say a higher ticket than what I had previously been offering very quickly. And I was like, yes, major win, right? After 30, not even within 30 days of launching it, I've already signed a client. Momentum, we're just going to move forward, right? This is amazing. And that individual did not budget or like even look at their
Okay.
budget going into signing with me. And with it, we launched their podcast that they'd been working on the idea and recording episodes for over a year, but never had the follow through. And
Okay.
I took all of that and we did cover letter, we figured out the title, we description, got it all set up, started like releasing episodes, having accountability, like working with the whole team. Week and a half later, he comes back to me and you pay monthly. And he goes, Olivia, I don't think we can continue together. I'm like, why? And he's like, honestly, it's the price, this and that. And we're going back and forth. And long story short, he ended up not renewing with me. And because again, when you're talking about, and I want to emphasize this for people, when you're dealing with a stressor like that, there comes a point where there might be other intentions involved. You never know. His intention and like his point was he was a salesperson. And like very quickly, it wasn't just about, okay, as a business owner, you have to understand your ebbs and flows of your business year and be able to budget and like
Sure.
probably know your budget prior to signing up for something. But secondly, it became very evident that he was just trying to see how much I would lower my price by. And then when I refused to do that because of the value he was getting, he was like, okay, no, I'm out. And he like got to a point, it was that clingy ex-girlfriend we all
Okay.
joke about, where
Yep.
then like they were like, okay, what can you do to take me back? And I'm like, it's not a fit. But in that loss, because a few days after that, I was like, oh my God, I signed them. Now we're like back at square zero. My boyfriend and I were having a conversation, and like through that conversation, he goes, honestly, I think that's the best thing that happened to you. Two reasons. And like then I started to reflect on it. He's like, one, you know it works. Someone jumped on it. You know it's there and it has
There
value.
you
He's
go.
the second, that client was not the right client for you. And
Right.
now you know it works. You know you can get more clients out of it. And two, you don't have to deal with the headache.
Yep.
It,
Yep. Yep.
and I
Yep.
was like, that's a win, even when going through a loss. And sometimes when we feel like we lost something, we're in such a fight or flight mode or like that panic that in reality we don't realize the win we just occurred.
Absolutely. And there's a time and place for everything. And so the concept that I like to talk about is about failing fast. You may not have kept that client, but absolutely now you know it works. You have some templates, right? You've created some templates that you can plug and play with. And so this was just the beginning. And so even to know that he or she was interested in coming back, you know you're doing something right. And so, there is learning,
Mhm.
and I hate to call it failure because that seems so harsh, but with having to pivot, there is failure. You learn through that process altogether. You learn your worth. You know what you're willing to budge on and what you're not willing to budge on, more importantly. So that's what's key at this point. That's what's key. You've learned and you've built a level of confidence, I'm guessing, in this as well.
Yes, exactly. And that being said, one thing I mentioned in my description is that you are a gentle disruptor. And I think sometimes in today's society, disruptors get a bad rap. I think disruptors can be the powerhouse that can shift things. And I
Yeah.
love that you are described as this gentle disruptor, someone who challenges the status quo through honest and transformative conversations, not just by trying to push back either. In a world where leadership is often associated with decisiveness and authority, why do you choose to lead through disruption and a gentle approach?
So, a true disclaimer, it was a label that was given to me. And
Mhm.
so I decided to lean in and own it. And so I owned it because I choose to lead through disruption with a gentle approach because real change, lasting change, happens when people feel like they have been heard, that they are valued, and that they're seen. There's always tough conversations that are necessary. So you think about as a parent, there are tough conversations that we have to have with our kids when they're little, but even tougher when they're older, if you will. And so the key with these tough conversations is about leaning in with a level of empathy. And so empathy and curiosity. And so with that is one, putting yourself in someone else's shoes to say, okay, why might they be reacting this way? Being intentional about playing through that in your head before you step into a conversation, because even words can be triggering to people. And so understanding what individuals are going through. So it's these tough conversations that are necessary, even more now when my daughter's older. But, it's the tough conversations that we can have to help create a clear path to what behavior change needs to take place. Also with understanding the direction where we want to be. And so I'll speak to it from a diversity perspective. It is creating an inclusive environment for all, but also understanding that we all come from a different walk of life. And so our values, we are tied to our values. We are tied to those values that we grew up with. And so I'm almost 50, so I'm going to say it proudly. And so there's some things that I'm 10 toes down in. And so for me to change or be curious about a different perspective, then I need to pause and lean in with an open mind. So I need to be just as curious about your point of view as I am steadfast in my own. And so it's all of those components, that level of understanding, empathy, and curiosity that allows me to lean in and have the tough conversations, but also putting the other individual in a place where they understand that they have made the decision. From a diversity, even from a leadership perspective altogether, my goal is not to change anyone's mind. It's to share that there might be a different perspective out there other than their own.
I love that. And I think that's so important is leaning into it. And thank you for your transparency on how you got the gentle disruptor.
Yep.
And the fact that I think a lot of times people get labeled something and it can be seen as a negative thing. And you just showed the power of you can take the title, lean into it, and it can shape itself. That word does not have to identify you. You can identify the word.
Yep.
And I think so many times we forget that and go, I can reclaim this. Now watch me reclaim it and see
Yep.
what I do with it.
Yep.
And I think the other thing there as well is understanding that you just have to give this space to be able to see different perspectives. A lot of times you might go into a room and go, okay, I'm going to know all the answers. My point's going to be right. This is going to be the path forward. But even in those small conversations, even if that is the result that ends up happening, as long as you're willing to be challenged,
Yep.
I shall say too, then you might get a different perspective on something where it might not play into that situation, but it could play into the other decisions you make as
Yep.
well.
Absolutely. And disruption is key. I think about something as simple as going to the gym, right? There's that level of disruption because your body's doing some things that it ain't done in a long time or ever, depending on if you've been to the gym before. And so I also believe that there is growth in discomfort. With me being a disruptor and pushing you and challenging you to think differently, to be open to new ideas, that's a muscle. That is absolutely a muscle that sometimes as adults, especially that curiosity piece, as adults, we don't use that muscle. We don't stretch that muscle very often. And so, going back to the analogy of going to the gym, I haven't been to the gym in 2 weeks, so I know I'm going to be hurting next week when I go back to the gym, but I know that it's a hurt so good because I'm back in there and I'm moving and stretching those muscles and growing those muscles that haven't been used in quite some time. So again, within that disruption, there is discomfort. And with discomfort, there is absolute growth.
And I like how you bring that up too, because it made me think of even outside the workplace with your gym analogy, how we can be put in those discomfort moments that can turn to growth. And two things that came to my head was one, I did not grow up going on long hikes in, climbing mountains, being in the middle of wilderness, shall we say, in a way. And now currently living in Alaska, you're surrounded by beautiful nature. And again, a lot of things people do is go on hikes, and there's so many nice trails and this and that. And that's not totally me. Let's be like, I'm going to be transparent. But it was like, okay, I know I have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable. So the only way to experience this and be present is if I try it. But also
Amen.
saying in those moments, and like it's been a journey mainly with the hiking than anything else because I'm scared of bears. Like
Oh, who is it?
yeah, I'm like, and we only have black bears here in Juneau. So they're like, well, they're harmless. Like it sounds dumb to anyone who lives here because they know they're harmless. I'm like, yo, I'm 5 foot, 90 pounds. Like, they're not harmless to me. Like, I feel like they're not harmless. Like, stop.
They
But
have teeth.
yeah, like they're big. They got claws. Like, come on now. But it's one of those things where it's like, take it slow. You don't have to go, okay, well, now I'm gonna lean in and grow and get uncomfortable. So let's go from 0 to 100 in that discomfort.
Right.
Sometimes it's about the small steps. It's, okay, maybe jumping full in and then going,
Yep.
okay, this is where my discomfort fits. Because I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but a lot of times we don't know we're going to be uncomfortable in that situation or how uncomfortable we might be until we're in the thick of it.
Right. Right. It's understanding boundaries, right? Understanding that there's baby steps and small wins and recognizing, okay, I saw my first bear. I'm not going to continue down that path right there. That's my boundary. That's where I stop. Now, we can try this again tomorrow
Mhm.
or maybe next week, but it's understanding where your boundaries lie. And sometimes, to your point, you don't know until you're in it to say,
Yes.
okay, this is that threshold. This is where enough is enough.
Well, and for me, one thing I started to say to people is because I know bears hibernate in the winter. So let's, even though it might be a little colder, let's do a little bit of those hikes or like not the full length or whatever, but like why don't we do it once they start hibernating? So then I can get comfortable with the environment and
Okay.
then I'm not thinking the whole time about the bear that might walk by me because I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm used to this now. So it's to your point also understanding not just the discomfort, but also sometimes where you need to sit and understand and be completely transparent in the communication of what your comfortability might be so that you know the steps you can take to move forward. Because ultimately, you have to move forward.
Yep.
And that,
I would call that a safe space. Being
Mhm.
able to create safety enough to say, okay, I'm willing to try it in this safe space. And then once I'm comfortable in this safe space, then I'm able to apply it in a bigger setting. So, having a simple conversation, about anything, giving feedback in a small safe space, I can test it. I can role play. That's that safety, right? Someone that's trusted, someone that trusts you and you trust them. So you can have those interactions in a safe space. And so once you've established a level of confidence, then you're willing to explore out. So absolutely, absolutely. Boundaries and safety are key.
I think it's so important how you brought up the safe spaces there too, because a lot of times we think about safe spaces and we're like, what does that truly mean? And you just identified it perfectly, I think, and really gave us it like make me think about it in a way of like, okay, it doesn't need to be this grandiose thing. It
Mm-mm.
really can be brought up in these small areas, but and what it looks like when we say safe space.
Yep, yep, yep.
And that being said, Monica, being a gentle disruptor requires, as you said, a deep understanding of when to push, how to communicate, how to be transparent, and when to step back and let transformation naturally unfold. Can you share a moment in your career when you had to navigate that fine line, when you had to decide whether to challenge a leader or let them arrive at a realization on their own, whether it was in your career path or as a coach and consultant? And what did that experience teach you about the psychology of leadership and change?
So I'm going to be transparent, fully transparent, because this situation is still a little fresh to me. And so I made some notes. So I hope you and your community stick with me as I kind of, because I document it so I can read through it. So yeah, so just to kind of, I'm going to read through, try and talk through it. I'm going to try and minimize the emotion, but it is something that I'm continuing to work through. And, as leaders, what we have to do is reflect on not only what the situation was, what role did you play in it, and what would you do differently if faced with the same situation? So here goes. So there was a situation where I was working with an individual. She happened to be fairly controlling, wanted at the time the position that I took, the role that I took, and had a not so positive relationship with the leader that I reported to. And so just imagine walking into said uneasy situation. So I had a choice. So what I did is I did schedule meetings one-on-one with this individual. Again, I've always taken the stance, and no matter what leadership training, what role I took, I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I'm just here to expose them to the opportunity to learn about different experiences. So instead of confronting her head on, I used that coaching approach, the telling the stories, sharing with her my experiences. So I would ask thought-provoking questions about how she engaged with her team, excuse me, and how her team engaged with her. Were they willing to challenge her? Whether the culture reflected the values that she believed in. And over time, she continued to maintain the stance that the work that I was doing, she didn't want to be a part of. And so it goes back to our previous conversation about there's a time and a place for everything. At the end of the day, leaders are just people. They are people that are grounded in their values and their beliefs. So that realization by itself helped me understand that there's a time and a place for everything. And it wasn't my time, or my time had passed. So with every relationship, personal and or professional, what we have to do is reassess the value that we bring to the organization, but also how the organization and individuals value us. So with that, I personally decided that our values no longer align. I had provided as much disruption. I had established strategy. I had established a reputation, not only for myself, but for the organization. And I recognized that to maintain a level of, I'm going to say sanity and peace of mind for myself, I decided that it was time for me to hand over the reins to someone else. And in a lot of roles, as the head of something that comes in to establish new departments, that tenure is normally anywhere between 2 to 3 years, because your goal is to come in and set up shop.
Mm-hmm.
And once that shop is set up, you say, okay, now I pass that off to you. And again, I'm a change management practitioner as well. And so it is about building awareness, establishing skills, working through the skills, and then how do you sustain that within the organization? And so I graciously, and again, I still have very good connections within that particular organization, but it was time, and I was okay with it. There were times that I questioned, okay, what could I have done differently? But in that same breath, I say, Monica, you did what you were supposed to do. You stood up, you advocated, you did what was right, not only what was right for you, but what was right for the organization and for those communities that you advocate for. And so at that time, and my mom was not well as well. And so I felt that it was time for me to hand over the reins.
I think it's so important how you highlighted the different aspects there as well. Is like there can be tough moments in anything, and taking the steps and making sure, hey, did I do everything? Like you said, you leaned into that, your training, what you help others do, and try to, in a sense, cross check everything off. Okay,
Yeah.
did I do this? Did I give that effort? Did I try this? To make sure you can walk away as well, like you said you did, with peace of mind and
Yeah.
go, I did it, and this was really the best outcome. Because a lot of times when we go through change and it doesn't work, yes, it can affect our experiences and how we approach things. But also, we tend to look back, whether it's at the end of the night, 10 years from now, and go, did I really make the right decision? But when you do what you just talked about, where you're checking all the boxes, you're really laying into it and making sure too that morally and ethically, like you said, it aligns with your values and that you're okay with the decisions you have to make and the places you have to the space, the seat you have to sit in that environment. Then when you walk away or change directions or hand over the keys, you go, I'm good. And I think that is really a key piece of it too, no matter the outcome, leaning into it and then walking away going, I know I tried everything. I know I did the best I could. And I know that I'm not going to regret it because I did X, Y, and Z. And I'm staying within my own lines and I got to narrate this story.
I mean, but it's still a difficult place to be in when you have high standards for yourself, high work ethics. It's still, I still question, again, what could I have done differently? How could I have should I have been a more gentle or disruptor? Should I have leaned in more? Are there different questions that I could have asked? Or is there a different level of engagement that I could have had within this individual? And you still beat yourself up because it's like, I failed. I failed. I failed myself. Did I fail the organization? Did I fail the communities that I was tasked with advocating for? There's all of that rawness that comes with making a hard decision for yourself. Just to be completely transparent. So,
And transparency is key. And I love how we keep emphasizing that in this conversation as well. Because if you can't be transparent, going back to, when you talk about when you mention success and that impact you want to make, transparency can make such a broader impact sometimes. And people know, okay, I'm in this space too. Now I know, give myself grace.
right.
Like I know I am safe. I can do this too. And as we reflect on moments of resistance, right, whether it's in corporate or in personal relationships, do you think the hesitation to change comes more from a place of fear and unknown or from an attachment to control, especially when you're working with executives and different level of people who look at achieving certain goals and benchmarks as a priority? And how do you help leaders recognize and dismantle their own internal roadblocks before they could effectively guide others through change?
So I'm going to say yes to control. And what was the other one? Yes to control and yes to.
I forget, to be honest.
Oh, it's yes and yes, right? It's yes and yes. So control and fear. Control and fear.
Yes, that was it. The fear of the unknown.
Control and fear. And in corporate, we really don't use the word fear, but for transparency purposes, we're going to call it fear. And so you think of, there's multiple instances. And so I think about, let's say, a senior leader that is so used to, has come up through the ranks in an organization and is so used to being boots on the ground, doing the work. And have been promoted because they have great leadership skills, people skills, but also they know how to get the work done. So I talk about the what, the tactical, the job, and the how to motivate and inspire their teams and people around them. And so once you get to a certain level, you have to be able to work at your level. not a level or two below. And so to be strategic. And so what that means is as you move up the ranks, as you are promoted, you have to relinquish some of that control to the leaders on your team, and you have to trust that they are capable of doing the job. But there comes a level of fear because, oh my gosh, I am delegating this work. And what if Bobby messes up? That means it's going to come back on my reputation, right? And so it's like that level of fear, we carry that baggage with us because everybody's going to remember that I delegated to Bobby. It didn't work out. So it's my fault. The control factor is it's just easier if I do it. It's faster if I do it. But as a leader, we have to remember that our role is to serve others, to prepare others to take our jobs. And so what that means is upskilling your team, the leaders around you, so that if you hit the lottery tomorrow, you're like, deuces, I'm out. You know that you have a pipeline of talent that can step in and fill your role. Also, when we talk about success, that even if I hit the lottery tomorrow, when people talk about the work that I did, they're saying, I know Monica left, but oh my gosh, I remember when. Remember when Monica did? And so those philosophies in that team is still grounded in the work and the values. It wasn't strictly about Monica. It was Monica taught us, Monica groomed us, and Monica prepared us for a day when we had to work without her. We do that as parents too. We groom our kids, and one day my daughter's going to have to learn to live without me. And I'd like to think that I've prepared her for that life. I ain't ready to go anywhere just yet, just know that. But each and every day as parents and as leaders, we are grooming those individuals around us to take our spot, to be able to live and do without us because of the values that we've instilled, because of the trust that we have instilled, because we have upskilled them and ensured that they were ready for that next step.
I love that because so many times, again, that fear and just the easeability, as you said, to just take control. But if you're not upskilling your team and preparing them for that, then you're going to feel like you can never leave either. Right. And it's going to go both ways. But also, I think part of the success when you are a leader is going, what can they do without me? What is that trust? I'm a president of a association chapter for the Association for Supply Chain Management. And I was talking to, I oversee the state of Connecticut, and I sit on their international board as a committee member. And I was talking at this past year, close to a year now, conference, and I was talking to different presidents and different committees. And I'm like, oh yeah, my team. They're like, well, how do you do this? And I go, well, my vice president of education handles it. And if he has questions, this and that. And they're like, okay, well, how do you handle this? And I go, well, my vice president of programming does this. And they're like, well, how much do you do? And I'm like, well, I run our meetings. I will sit in on a meeting they need me to attend and give my advice, or if they need me to take something over, then they reach out to me. I do that, or we do this and that. And they're like, so you don't do all of it? And I go, no. The strength in being the president, for example, is in that situation when I have a team, they're only in their positions for a reason. And as long as I can trust that they're actually going to do what they have committed to do, then why do I need to be the one doing everything?
Absolutely.
And I said, the strength in it is, as a leader, I should say, yeah, go do it. Take care of it. I trust you. If you need me, I'm here. Instead of going, as some other presidents in this conversation is like, yeah, I have these people, but I'm at every meeting. I'm making all the final decisions. I'm helping do this. I'm like, how do you even have the time?
Right.
And that's where it gets confused too. Of like, yes, there's a level of sometimes it can be easier just having the control, but how rewarding would it be to go, now I got time back.
Yep.
Now I could do X, Y, Z, and it'll just get taken care of.
And my team feels valued. They know that I trust them enough to do this work. And that's why my organization is called Impacting Squared, because if you impact the employee, you'll impact the organization. It's a multiplier effect.
I love that because it really is something that, and I didn't even think about that when like listing your name and the company name and doing my own research, that you were doing a play on multipliers. And I'm
Yep.
like, that's genius. That's
Yep. It's a multiplier
genius.
effect.
Monica, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
I'm a huge LinkedIner. So you can find me, Dr. Monica Curry, on LinkedIn. You can find my webpage, again, as you mentioned, www.impactingsquared.com. Or again, you can simply email me at mcurry@impactingsquared.com as well.
Thank you, Monica, for all of your insight today.
Pleasure is all mine. It was a privilege and a pleasure to be a part of this conversation. And hopefully people around that have watched will continue the conversation even without us.
I couldn't agree more. And a few of those key takeaways from today's conversation includes if someone is sitting around their dinner table, what do you want the conversation to be about when they mention your name? I love how we dove in right there and started talking about that because it's so true. And it can also be that analogy that we can use in many different rooms. If you're not in the room, you're not at the table having the discussion, what do you want people to say when they talk about you? What is that impact you want to leave? And as well as fail fast. There is a power and a win in failing that Dr. Monica and I talked about that I think is so important. You have to pivot. And in pivots, there can be failure that happens. But if you pivot fast, you can still win. And you are winning because now you know where to lie and where to change. As well, sometimes you should lean into the title given to you. As Monica shared her story of how she became known as that gentle disruptor, she decided, I'm going to hold this power. I take this name and I'm going to use it with grace and dignity, and I'm going to make it a superpower because it really is my superpower. Instead of using it as something as, oh, well, she's just a disruptor, right? It's all in the tone, it's all in the power. And so when given a title, sometimes think about what are they really saying to me? And I could only think, knowing Monica, that when they gave her the disruptor title, it was not a negative thing. It's just like, oh yeah, she's going to come in, she's going to disrupt and make things better. And sometimes it's reframing that, but also going, okay, well, this is what people see me as my superpower. I'm going to lean into this. As well as growth, there is growth in discomfort and disruption. And know that in order to disrupt something and change it and make it better, you have to get uncomfortable. And within that, growth will come. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Dr. Monica Curry. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.